Halloween party at the house on Carver Hill by the Prowler. The old Carver's Mill estate on Carver Hill had been rumored to be haunted since the Carver family first erected the home in 1883. Some say even before that. The estate supposedly sits on an old Cherokee Indian burial ground. Some say that the land has always been cursed, and that the Cherokee would never step foot on it. Whatever the case, there always seemed to be some kind of tragedy that befell the land, always resulting in pain and death. And that's all before the Carver family even built their home. I've been reading a book on our local spook house at the library, and let me tell you, the stories that range from a Cherokee hunting party disappearing, then being found days later on top of the hill, massacred, hanging by their intestines from the trees, to a family of settlers that were left stranded on the hill, separated from the rest of their caravan during a winter storm. They were stuck on that hill all winter. Supplies ran out. The food was gone. A search party was finally able to break through a few months later as the snow began to dissipate. And what they found was a horrific sight they'd never forget. In one of the tattered tents, they found a man covered in blood, surrounded by the chewed-up corpses of his family. It's enough to make your blood run cold. Of course, the deaths did not stop once the Carver family purchased the land and built their sprawling home. The purchasing of the land being dirt cheap, by the way, because of the things already discussed. People just didn't want anything to do with it. Plenty of accidents occurred during construction, including one death. But as I said, it was attributed as an accident. It took some years before the Carver family met its grisly demise, with plenty of rumors in between of abuse that went on within the walls and disappearances of servants who worked at the estate, leading to that deadly night. It took place during the night of the biggest storm that has ever hit Beecher Valley. It happened right after dinner, and as the table was being cleared by the servants and Mrs. Carver, that is when Mr. Carver went mad. Crazed and wild-eyed, screaming incoherently about the lightning and Mrs. Carver having an affair, he attacked everyone with an uncontrollable bloodlust, slicing and hacking whoever he could get his hands on with a carving knife he had used to cut the rib roast just an hour before. He slaughtered his entire family before turning the knife on himself. All that remained was a half-dead maid who was rumored to be having an affair with Mr. Carver. Because of the grisly end to the Carver family and all of the rumors of curses and whatnot, and the home being filled with coffins, that was Mr. Carver's profession. He was a coffin maker. The home went unpurchased and unclaimed. It was left to rot and decay, which it has to this day. It's become a teenage rite of passage through the years, however. If you want to prove how tough you are, you'll spend the night at the old spook house. That old story. Accidents have not stopped over the years, however, and even a couple of kids have disappeared just a few years ago. The city tried their best and chained the fence, also posting warning signs around the property, warning to stay out. but after time, they just gave up. The locks were always being stolen, and the warning signs taken by the kid who thought it would look cool hanging from their bedroom wall. The old house on Carver Hill is a frightening, dangerous place, and tonight, that's where we're throwing our Halloween party. Should be fun. The party will be attended by a small, intimate group of friends, 5 to be exact. There's me. I'm Charlie, by the way. Then there's Linda, Beth, Johnny, and Samantha. It's only supposed to be us 5, but Linda is a chatty Cathy and probably blabbed to half the class about the party. Charlie and Beth were in charge of the food and drinks. They got the desired necessities and met everyone else at the house later on. When they pulled up to the house, everyone was waiting for them outside, too uncomfortable to go in by themselves, perhaps. Everyone grabbed everything they needed and headed inside. The house was musky and damp. Contents of the house remain to this day, decaying and aging with time. The furniture was covered with sheets, and everything remained in its place, like nothing ever happened. The kids uncovered a few tables and pushed them together to put the food on. Linda and Samantha also brought decorations and started to put them around the room to make the old house look more festive, just in case anyone else showed up. They also lit every candle they could find to brighten up the room. And now that they could see, they were able to get a good look at each other. It was a Halloween party after all. Charlie was dressed as Professor Ravenscroft, the famous occult archaeologist. Linda was dressed as a sexy Stoolzabub. Beth was dressed as a brown-lit candle. Johnny was dressed as the Prowler. And Samantha came as the cherry stem killer. The group right away made fun of Linda and questioned her costume choice, wondering why she would dress up like a demonic shit. No matter how sexy she looked. The laughing and jokes were interrupted, however, when the front door violently closed. The group all turned towards the door, startled. It was Denise, the class outcast and believer in all things occult. Demons are no laughing matter and shouldn't be made fun of, no matter the situation, especially in a place like this, she said seriously. She was dressed as a witch and holding a book, which she was gripping onto tightly. Ooh, Denise is here, everybody. Great. Nice witch costume, by the way, Johnny said sarcastically. Bite your tongue, you simple bastard. Don't you know how evil this place is? Don't you know what tonight is? And I'm not a witch. I'm dressed as Mrs. Carver, she snapped back. The group tried calming Denise down and to lighten up. Yeah, we know what tonight is. It's Halloween. So let's party, they cheered as they cranked the radio all the way up. The group began to dance and have a good time as Denise faded into the shadows, watching them. As Charlie danced with Beth, he noticed Denise walk out of the shadows towards the table by the fireplace. She sat her book down and lit a fire. The room was now aglow from the fire, and he noticed her begin to read from the book. After a few minutes, the air grew heavy, and a chill rushed through the air. And the flames from the fireplace began to flicker. Then, out of nowhere, the music started fading in and out, then stopped. The group was frightened, and Charlie held Beth tightly. Then a low demonic voice started speaking from the radio. It spoke in tongues, in an ancient language not heard by man in centuries. Denise began to laugh. You're all doomed. You should never have came here this Halloween night. It's the anniversary of the Carver murders. They say Mrs. Carver was a witch. Did you know that? None the matter. The spirits here are angry. She's angry. Did you know that Halloween is the one night of the year the dead can return? Did you know that? Well, they can. And tonight, they returned for you, she said maniacally. The night then rang out with the torturous screams of the group's death. They weren't found for some days later. It was a gory sight to behold, they say. A massacre left strewn across the decorated living room floor. Beware the house on Carver Hill. And have a happy Halloween. Jack by the Prowler. Do you know of the origin of the jack-o'-lantern? No? Well, let me tell you. It started in a wee village in Ireland with a wee nasty lad named Jack O'Leary, who grew up to be a nasty gentleman. He robbed from the old, he stole from the poor, he harassed the village women, and his crimes even escalated to murder. His deeds could never be proven. There were never witnesses, so he continued to torment the village. No one was safe, not the old, not the young, nor the sick or the meek. If you had what he wanted, he'd take it with no warning and no remorse. The villagers barricaded themselves in their homes when Jack approached, hoping and praying he'd pass them by, until one Halloween he went too far. He murdered a child, a wee girl named Gwyneth. Well, that was the last straw. They cornered Jack in a pumpkin patch. They cut a hole in the top of a pumpkin and shoved his head inside and set it on fire. He kicked and he screamed as he died slowly, writhing on the ground. He cursed the town with his last dying breath, vowing to return. So the townspeople carve faces and stick candles inside pumpkins and call them jack-o'-lanterns to make sure Jack doesn't come back seeking revenge. The Power of Halloween by the Prowler. Halloween is a fun, exciting holiday for most, especially the children who dress up in their costumes and walk the neighborhoods in search of treats. Halloween, however, is also an ancient and some would say magical time of the year, a day celebrated by ancient Celtic and pagan tribes, and a day where some believe the dead can return to visit their loved ones. While those ancient beliefs and traditions have faded over the course of time, Halloween is still a special day of the year. celebrated by most, and it's no different with the fine people who inhabit the small town of Rook's Point. The night of Halloween can have a special effect on people, and maybe it'll have a special effect on Rorden Hurley on this Halloween night. Rorden hasn't had the kindest of childhoods, which has led into not so kind teenage years as well. He comes from a broken home, and he lost his older sister, who happened to be his closest friend, in a car accident while they were both teenagers. He was also in the car and was lucky to survive. Life hasn't been too kind for Rorden. He lives alone, has no loved ones, works at the local grocery store stocking shelves, but isn't physically strong. Never has been. As a matter of fact, he's always been ridiculed by the other kids he grew up with for his scrawny frame. He still gets teased and pushed around because of it. Lonely and isolated, he moves through life in this small town of Rook's Point, going from work to home, daily and nightly, while being mocked by others along the way. This Halloween might have something more pleasant in store for him, however. While he was stocking some cans of soup on the shelf, Trudy walked up to him. She was a cashier in the store and Rorden's crush since high school. They exchanged hellos and some small talk. They were friendly. She was never one of the kids that made fun of him while growing up. They were never great friends, but friendly and polite. Out of nowhere, though, she said, "The reason I came over to talk to you was because I wanted to invite you to a Halloween party at my house tonight." He was, of course, shocked at the invitation. No one had ever asked him to go anywhere. He didn't have any friends at all, but he quickly shook away the shock and confusion and accepted the invitation. She smiled at him, told him the time the party started, and walked away. He remained crouched as a smile formed across his face. "I finally have something to do. I've finally been invited somewhere. Maybe things are finally changing for the better," he thought. It never seemed to fail, though. Someone on a daily basis wanted to mess with him. Later on in his shift, a group of teenagers entered the store. He had the mop and bucket and was tending to a spill that needed cleaning up. They started teasing him, as they always did. Most of the group were the younger siblings of the kids that used to tease him when he was a kid. So the vicious circle continued. They circled him, and one of the teenagers took his mop. He told them to give it back. They began to mock him and taunt him with it. When he had had enough and started towards the teenager holding the mop, they threw the mop towards his legs, causing him to trip and crash into the bucket filled with water. They all started laughing at him until they were told to leave by the manager. He got himself up, more embarrassed than in pain, but didn't let the incident ruin his mood. It was almost clock-out time, and he had a party to get ready for. While it's true he had never been invited to a Halloween party, he was already prepared. He already had a costume, even with such short notice. You see, he loved the horror genre. Books, movies, games, you name it. He loved it. So he figured why not go as his favorite horror movie character, Michael Myers. He had the blue mechanic jumpsuit. He, of course, had the mask. It was perfect. He jumped in the shower and quickly got dressed. It was now night as he left his house. The streets and neighborhoods were filled with parents and their children trick-or-treating. The night air felt cool and crisp. As he excitedly made his way down the street, he felt alive, For the first time in his life, he had never felt the way he was feeling at that moment and couldn't explain the reason for it if you asked him. He felt safe and strong. No one knew it was him underneath the Michael Myers mask, so no one made fun of him as he walked by. On this Halloween night, he felt like a new person, reborn, if you will. When he finally made it to Trudy's house, he walked up to the door and knocked. She answered, and he raised up his mask to show it was him underneath. She smiled and told him she was glad that he could make it and invited him in. As he entered, he could see the party was filled with the people he grew up with, who ridiculed him and made fun of him his entire life growing up. He quickly lowered his mask back down so no one could see it was him. He realized, of course, a lot of those people would be here, since everyone knew each other and grew up together. The thought just slipped his mind earlier in the excitement. He brushed it off, though, and was determined to have a good time. Nobody knew it was him yet underneath the mask, and he took advantage of it. He danced with a few girls who weren't so kind to him growing up, in particular Mindy Hickman, who was quite nasty to him in high school. They danced to a couple of songs, all the while thinking what she would say if she knew it was him underneath the mask. He then moved on and had a dance with Trudy. Afterwards, he asked where the bathroom was. He was starting to get hot dancing in the mask all night and wanted to go take it off and splash some water on his face to cool down. When he came back from the bathroom, it had seemed word spread around to everyone who was behind the Michael Myers mask. Riordan was scared at first. All the memories of his past flashed through his mind as he was getting ready for everyone to start making fun of him like they always do. But no one seemed to have a problem that he was there. The party continued into the night. There were Halloween games and food and more dancing. The alcohol was flowing, and so was the drugs, as a matter of fact. After hours and hours of all that is when everything changed, however. All those happy party people who didn't care who was there, they just wanted to have a good time, turned back into the people they were when they were all growing up. A group of the guys started making fun of him, calling him names like they used to in school. Then one by one, it spread across the rest of the people at the party. The girls who danced with him were now grossed out by him and told him they felt sick when they touched him. One by one, everyone started to laugh and make fun of him. He stood there and felt lost and alone, like he always had throughout his life. He pushed his way through the crowd and made his way into the kitchen. He needed to get away from everyone. He stood there alone, trying to catch his breath. He raised the mask up so he could breathe. As he was starting to calm down, Trudy walked in. She had always been decent to him, always kinder than the rest. He thought she came in to console him, maybe say a few kind words, but he was wrong. Instead, she said thank you for ruining my party. She called him a loser and said she should never have invited him. Who knows why she said what she said, but her cruelness was the last straw. When she told him to get out and left the kitchen, he pulled his mask back on and felt a rush of anger and power, the likes he had never felt before. He reached over and pulled the butcher knife out of the block and went back into the party. He made his way past everyone to the front door, listening to more insults as he passed, everyone telling him to leave and calling him names. As he reached the front door, however, instead of leaving, He locked it and put the chain across the hinge. He gripped the large butcher knife tightly and slowly turned. Most everyone became silent, just staring at him, wondering what was going on, except for a couple of the guys who were talking their shit. They died first. When he butchered the first couple of people, everyone screamed. He then went to work, massacring everyone and anyone who crossed his path, their screams of pain and terror being drowned out by the loud music. No one on the outside knew what was happening on the inside. One by one, room by room, he butchered everyone, taking out a lifetime's worth of pain and torture he suffered at the hands of these people, with a power he had never felt in his entire life. On this Halloween night, he was no longer the weak and scrawny kid everyone had always made fun of. He was strong and ruthless and killed with a purpose. After disposing of everyone, he heard a whimper in the corner as he walked back into the living room. It was Trudy. She sat in the corner and begged for her life. She said she was sorry. He then plunged the butcher knife into her heart and left her to die, choking on her own blood. He then left and made his way back home. It was late into the night, and there was hardly a soul out. The night air was cool and made him feel alive. He didn't want this new feeling to end. Just then, he heard laughing and the sounds of smashing. It was the teenage punks from the store earlier who taunted him and caused him to trip and fall. They were smashing pumpkins and ransacking the neighborhood. The magic of Halloween wasn't done with Riordan yet. On this night, he pulled his Michael Myers mask back down and gripped his butcher knife, for he had more revenge to attend to. Something's Wrong with the Corn by the Prowler. I pose a question for my fellow Halloween diehards out there that are thinking of traversing through a corn maze this season for a spooky activity. Can you trust it? I know I never have. Nature's most smuggest vegetable. I mean, think about it. It stands there all smug and erect, looking all high and mighty as it looks down on the rest of the vegetable world, with its green stalks wrapping it tightly and its bright yellow bumps glistening under the warmth of the sun. What's it thinking about? What's it plotting? Does it remember every corn on the cob you've ever had? Every chowder? Every bag of popcorn you've popped? And what about those cream corn nights? You've spent your life eating it. What if it's thinking about eating you? I've never liked it myself, going back to when I was a wee babe. Like I said, I've never trusted it, with its steamy taste and squishy texture, trying to chew on its tiny kernels, and there's no amount of butter that will hide that shit. Speaking of, how can you trust a food that refuses to digest? Days later, still showing up in the bottom of the toilet. What's it doing there? Trying to perform some bodily revolt before your insides finally say enough is enough and expelled before it can do damage. I loathe it with my entire being, so you may think I speak with a biased opinion on the subject. You may think I'm mad altogether. It's just a vegetable, you say, but I know I speak the truth. I've searched the annals of local histories of towns who have a heavy corn population, and the thing they all have in common throughout the years is the strange disappearances in the corn and even death. That's right, my friends. I have come across many stories where bodies have been found savagely torn apart, left strewn in the cornfields. Last Halloween cemented my beliefs when my fiancée showed me a picture she took with her phone while walking through a corn maze with her children. Just before she exited, she snapped a picture of a corn stalk standing there all smugly, and she noticed it had long flowing hair hanging from its opening, like pubic hair. How can you trust that? How can you trust a hairy vegetable? I was shocked. I was disgusted. Plus, how can you trust something a group of bloodthirsty religious children choose as their medium to hide in? You see, Stephen King knew. Animals know about the corn, insects, the crows. They all try and destroy it. They know something's wrong. Why don't we? I'll tell you what, we better figure it out before it's too late. They're out there, lined up in their rows, nestled in their fields, plotting and waiting. The Dark Side of Hollywood, Part 5, The Halloween Party. There's a home in the Hollywood Hills, built during the golden age of Hollywood for silent movie star Douglas Fairbanks. Lavish and breathtaking, it sat vacant for years after changing hands from multiple famous owners. Most have met untimely demises, from legendary actor Julian Craven to its last occupant, actress and icon Marilyn Monroe. The home has since been purchased by the city and has maintained its upkeep. There are rumors, however, of it being haunted by its previous famous inhabitants, if you believe in such things. And in this particular instance, I think you should. The old Spanish-style villa does not stay vacant throughout the year, however, which brings us to tonight's story. Behind the walls of this immaculate home is a party being thrown, a Halloween party hosted by the master of horror, Vincent Price. And since he is the host, the parties are always stylized. The House on Haunted Hill Party. So on this night, every year, movie stars and other important people on the Hollywood scene get dressed in their most frightening of guises and head to the haunted house in the Hollywood Hills. When guests arrive, they are greeted by Vincent himself, always dressed in one of his costumes he wore in one of his movies. Then party guests are ushered into the bowels of the home, where they are greeted with eats and drinks, hors d'oeuvres and spirits to start out, followed by a 4-course meal later in the evening. In the meantime, guests are entertained by tarot readings and classic party games, a best costume competition, which is usually won by Betty Davis, and finally, the seance, where the party guests try to conjure up the spirits of Hollywood past. You will be glad to know we've happened to attend a star-studded party this year, with such guests in attendance as horror legends Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, Christopher Lee, and Donald Pleasance. Also, legendary actresses Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, kept separate of course, plus crooners Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., silver screen dance legends Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, award-winning actress and recent widow Julie Lamont, legendary director Billy Wilder, and agent to the stars, Johnny Harlow. This is probably the most impressive lineup of stars that's been in this party's attendance. They're not the only ones, however. That was just the living guests in attendance. I told you all earlier to believe in ghosts, for this is Halloween, and this is the one night the dead can return to the living. The list of deceased guests in attendance is quite impressive as well. Legends Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable, horror legend Bela Lugosi, multi-Oscar winner Julian Craven, singer and actress Carmen Miranda, and finally, James Dean. This is truly a frighteningly delightful night. Good food, good spirits, both alcoholic and the apparitions. It's just a great atmosphere all around. I wish I could tell you no one gets harmed at this yearly affair, but there's a frightening rumor of a bedroom at the back of the house, and inside said bedroom it is said sacrifices are performed on some of the poor unsuspecting staff by a movie star or two, who may or may not have achieved their stardom by striking a deal with the devil. What stars, you ask? Well, I'm sorry, but that's not for me to say. Just know that demons need to be appeased, and sacrifices are how one accomplishes that. Are these rumors true? Who's to say? But if you want to have a good time at this Halloween party every year, I would stay away from the back rooms if I were you, just in case. Stay close to Mr. Price. He'll make sure nothing bad happens to you. So what do you think? Would you attend the House on Haunted Hill party? What's that you say? You prefer something more ordinary. Well, there's nothing ordinary when you attend a Halloween party, and especially when that party is on the dark side of Hollywood.